At a rally last weekend, Elon Musk promoted debunked conspiracy theories about voting machines and encouraged voters to share any potential signs of fraud on social media.
Any sort of voting concerns that people have should be posted on the X platform and on every platform, and be very loud about it.
Musk, who has been campaigning for former President Donald Trump, has repeatedly shared false conspiracies about voter fraud on social media. Our CBS News Confirmed team did an analysis of his profile and found that 55% of his posts contain misleading or false statements. CBS News election law expert and political contributor David Becker joins me now. He's also the executive director of the Center for Election Innovation and Research. David, thanks for being here with us tonight. What are the laws regarding poll watching and people tracking what others are doing at voting stations?
Well-trained poll watchers are a really important part of the whole transparency of our elections. When they are well-trained, they represent the campaigns, the parties, the candidates. They can watch the process. They can attest to the fact that it's all going as it's supposed to. If they see a problem, they can call the proper authorities. I think when we have problems are when there are people who kind of go beyond that role of just observing and start to interfere in the system. And another problem we potentially have here with this effort to spread claims of fraud that might be witnessed is that a lot of people don't understand what they're seeing in the process. They don't understand the context that it's in. Not everyone is an election expert. I do this stuff every day. Most people vote once every 2 or 4 years. So what we've seen in the past is there's a lot of disinformation that comes from what people think they're seeing. And I think, the way to think about it is, I don't know how much Mr. Musk would like it if someone set up a platform for people to spread claims related to Tesla cars and whether they were malfunctioning, because they might not understand exactly what was happening either. So this is one of those things. It's likely going to fuel a lot of disinformation. We've seen Mr. Musk spread a lot of disinformation around the election in other areas as well.
What are the dangers in fueling distrust at polling stations and with voting machines?
Well, what's going to happen is it's very possible that the losing candidate will take some of these lies, will allow them to fuel disinformation in the post-election environment, and could possibly incite anger and violence. And this isn't really hypothetical. We saw that in 2020. And a lot of this anger and violence is going to be targeted at election officials. They're going to be targeting them at the state level, at particular county levels, at facilities. We've even seen in the past when former President Trump targeted particular individuals, people like Secretary of State Al Schmidt, people like Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, and others. And the danger to these public servants is real, and it could also somewhat disrupt the process, although I have confidence that process will go on regardless.
What is a legitimate legal process to raise concerns about voter fraud if people have them?
Look, in every state, we have a legal process to challenge the results of an election if you think there was a legitimate reason to do so. If you think that after the official results are counted, you're behind and you have a reason to believe that there was fraud or some other problem that could lead you to make up that deficit, that margin of the other candidate, then you can bring it to court. But when you bring it to court, you can't come with random conspiracy theories and false claims. You've got to bring evidence. And courts have been very, very strict about holding those kinds of claims to their evidentiary burden. So, if you've got a legitimate claim, the Florida 2000 situation was legitimately litigated, very close election. But the 2020 election, they brought claims all over the place, well over 60 cases, and not one of them proved any kind of problem with that election.
The Washington Post put out a report this week that says in the past year, 236 Republican candidates running for Congress or top state offices across the country posted or amplified falsehoods or misinformation about the election. How concerning is that?
Well, it's very concerning for the reason I mentioned before, that it's likely to incite anger and possibly violence, possibly directed at the public servants who run elections in this country. It's also somewhat unusual to see so much disinformation, particularly coming from one side, one candidate, where you would think that a candidate who thinks they're winning would have every incentive to legitimize a process that's likely to deliver their victory. We've seen this time and time again. And it speaks potentially volumes about the mindset of a candidate who is spreading claims about a fraud in a potential election without any evidence about whether or not they think they're actually on a path to victory or not.
David Becker, so good to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.